بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's commanded us to do good deeds and abstain from evil deeds. We need to understand is, what is a good deed? Yes, a good deed is not simply ibadah. Ibadah is also a good deed. But that ibadah has to be done in a way which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And is muwafiqun li-shari'i, is muwafiq with the shara'. For example, tahajjud salah. You can say tahajjud salah is a salihat, from the salihat. But if you perform tahajjud salah in a way which doesn't please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is not something which brings pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You perform tahajjud salah for 2 hours at night time, and then you miss fajr. So in itself is a salihat. Yes, it's a salih amal. But it's not in accordance to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go for hajj, but you're in kitabul hajj. What's the condition of hajj? You have to have enough provisions that those people who you're responsible for, they have enough money when you go. Yes, it mentioned qudur, isn't it? One of the shart conditions of hajj is, you have zad and rahila, you have means of getting there. And also those people whose nafaqah is your responsibility, when you are away, they have money for them. So you're going for hajj, but they don't have money, they're starving or they're begging, or so the hajj in itself is a salih. But because it's not done the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to carry out, it is not going to bring pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have talabul ilm. You have talabul ilm is farad talabul ilm, and you have nafil talabul ilm. So the ilm that we're acquiring here is nafil. Now, if you're acquiring this knowledge, but you're violating somebody else's rights, like let's say for example, you're acquiring this knowledge, but because of you acquiring knowledge, now your children are, what are they doing? You don't know. You're studying, mashallah, very good, but now children are out, they're roaming, they're going in the streets, and you're just busy in your books, and you're not looking after them. So they were at home before, you're looking after them, teaching them, and now because they were studying, you start roaming the streets, start smoking. It's like, now this is in itself is amal salih, but it's not in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there's wants it from you, because what's aqdam, what's muqaddam? Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, looking after your family. So this nafil ilm is now, because you're doing this, and you're not, some people start doing talabul ilm, and then they can't fulfill their jobs. So they want to acquire knowledge, it's nafil knowledge, they're already working. I'm not talking about the young kids, but the elder people. So the elders, so this, okay, the job is at risk, the money is at risk, the income is at risk. So now you have to consider all of these things. So what is important is not simply doing a good deed. What's important? Doing a good deed which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأَنْ أَعْمَلَ صَالِحًا رَبِّ أَوْزِئْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ. Oh Allah, grant me the tawfiq and the ability to be grateful for the ni'mah you have bestowed upon us. Number one. And number two, أَنْ أَعْمَلَ صَالِحًا, I do good deeds. But what's the qaid? What's the condition of this good deed? تَرْضَاهُ, which you are happy with, which brings you pleasure. So remember this, that sometimes, so one is, obviously, disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to bring Allah's pleasure. And number two, the good deed has to be done in a way which it pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, and sometimes there may be a good deed which is very insignificant, but it pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of sincerity, because of the way it's been carried out. That can bring reward that even a normal deed which we may consider even more significant will not bring. So whenever you're doing any good deed, keep this in mind, that am I doing it in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants it to be done? Not simply, it looks like a good deed. Is that clear to everybody?